filmmaker and former bookseller, represent, Kimberly Latrice-Jones. Kim is a bestselling and critically acclaimed author of several YA novels with co-author Jilly Siegel, including I'm Not Dying With You Tonight, which was nominated for NAACP Image Award, and Why We Fly. Gotta check those out if you haven't. And with deep roots in the literary world, Kimberly has also served on several literary committees, including the Library of Congress and the Children's Book Council. In addition to her resonant words on the page, she has also made an impact in the visual arts, including her viral video, How Can We Win?, which was published during the George Floyd protest, and of course, her continued work in entertainment industry. So I'm so excited to see what else comes. So now on to the event you're all waiting for. It is truly my honor to pass over the conversation to Jay and Kim. The virtual stage is yours.
First of all, let me just give everybody a visual of how I feel right now.
No, that's me. That's me. I'm so excited to talk to you. Literally, like I've been looking forward to this. Like this conversation has gotten me through my day. I'm so excited.
Well, anything that crazy happened today, screw you, Dave, because it's lit on this call right now. Let me tell you that. Listen, this book is both delicious. This series is both delicious and nutritious, good for you and good to you. What an elevation in education through excitement, adventure, magic, all the deliciosity that we can think of. And everybody knows, if they follow me at all, that my brand is Hood Girls Can Be Heroes Too. And if this story isn't the literal definition of that, I don't know what is. Child, when I read this duology, my head popped off. I was so glad that I had Ashes of Gold when I finished Wings of Ebony, because you left us on such a cliffhanger. I was like, Lord, here comes the Chancellor. What is about to happen now? I'm so glad. And it just like literally came in like, boom, hit you in the face. So just to get folks up to speed in case they've been sleeping under a whole rock, just give us a quick synopsis of the duology of Wings of Ebony and the Ashes of Gold.
Yes, thank you, Kim. This is a dream. Seriously, I'm literally crying tears of joy. Okay, so book one, Wings of Ebony, starts off with Rue, a Black teen from an inner city community. She's from the hood in a neighborhood called East Row, which I modeled after the third ward of Houston, where I grew up. After her mother is murdered, her father, who she never knew, that's important, takes her to a magical island where he lives, where nobody looks like her. And he basically has taken her away from everything that she knows, including her little sister. So when the book opens, she is actually sneaking back to Houston to leave a gift for her sister on the anniversary of their mother's death, just to remind her sister, hey, I remember too. Because when she left, she was taken in secret. But that goes horribly wrong. And what unfolds is this sort of thrill ride where Rue is discovering who she really is, learning more about her ancestral heritage, learning more about why her father was absent for so many years, all in trying to save her sister. And through it, she, this is minorly spoilery, she inherits her ancestors' magic. And that's a process because she has a hard time accepting that side of her heritage because it's tangled up in conflicted emotions about her father, who she had a lot of like unresolved feelings about because he wasn't around. But through the course of the book, you get to see Rue grapple with that. And then at the end, like Kim said, I leave it on a cliffhanger. And when you pick up book two, it really does start off in very real time, kind of where the first book left off. And this is where Rue is going back to the magical island. And she's dealing with the antagonist there, which is the Chancellor who colonized the island and took it from her ancestors.
Oh, it's just so good. It's just like, oh my God, it's all so good. So I'm going to get like the, housekeeping question that you have to ask out of the way first, and then we're going to dig a little deeper. What inspired you to write this series?
I just wanted a book that was a fantasy world that I saw myself in, that young me saw myself in. I have two sisters, they're 15 and 16. Mm-hmm. And I wanted a fantasy world that they could see themselves in, because fantasy is such a powerful aesthetic for a lot of things. To put magic in front of a kid and like reflect their life in a magical story and show them that they can do things that seem unimaginable, that is really important. Like cognitively in children's development, it's so important. And I feel like there's a whole like subset of children, a lot from my community, who don't get that opportunity. And so since that book didn't exist as a kid, I wanted to write it. I wanted to write inner city kids in that space. So I was inspired by, I mean, the literal inspiration was an image that came to me of a girl standing in my neighborhood. I recognized the buildings behind her, and I wasn't living at home at the time. So a lot of me writing this book was like cathartic, because I was like revisiting home in my heart, in my mind. I wanted to taste it and smell it and feel it. So I put a lot of home into the story because I lived across the country at the time. But there was this girl standing in my neighborhood over a body who was bleeding. It was in 2018 when this happened, like when I had this like image pop in my head. And I just remember she felt incredibly grieved and incredibly powerless to stop it. And I didn't understand anything other than that. I just knew she was deeply sad, like a deep sad that I didn't even really have words for. And she felt like she could do nothing to prevent the death of whoever this person was to her. And so I decided in that moment, I literally just started typing to write a story that put the magic back into her hands. So she had the power to fix whatever it is she wanted to protect that person from. And that's what came out of me in 35 days was Wings of Ebony.
You wrote Wings of Ebony in 35 days. Boy,
I did, but yes, the first draft.
My publisher would love you. It's like used to get me to finish anything. So what were some of so I know you said you really had never seen this kind of like story reflected from people from your community, which, as you know, I relate to. What were some of the things that you read growing up that you connected to, that inspired you, that maybe have inspired your writing style?
Gosh, so when I was really young, I read, of course, all the required reading, and on the school supply list, there were a lot of things on there that I don't like that I remember because I mean, I grew up in Texas. If you know anything about the Texas education, I mean, you know, enough said, but some of the more positive things that I remember, like early books, like Eric Carlisle. I mean, I know that's like early, but I was obsessed with Goosebumps novels, because for me, and it's funny because I'm a horror wimp now, like anybody knows me now, I can watch something with a slight little creep in it and I'm sleeping with the lights on, like I'm a wimp. But then Goosebumps felt like fantasy. Like, I guess it kind of is, like it's make believe, right? And so it was like, okay, I can suspend my disbelief in this world. As I got older, I read a lot of poetry as a kid. Alice Walker. I read a lot of Maya Angelou. She is deeply, deeply inspirational to me. My entire next series is inspired by one of her poems. And then when I got to high school, there wasn't really YA at that point. So I jumped from like those books to like Eric Jerome Dickey, and I jumped to like Fly Girl. You know, I was a Sister Soldier, coldest winter ever.
Yeah. Tyree, go ahead.
Yes. Omar and Sister Soldier, like those are the books that I was reading. I also really I always loved mysteries and thrillers. I read, can't think of the person, V.C. Andrews had a Flowers in the Attic series. And I remember it was like, staring at a car crash. I was like, oh my gosh, it was very deep. And like, I haven't read that book in ages, but I remember being very into anything that was mystery based and anything where there was somebody on the cover that looked like me. So
I love it. So you created this amazing world, juxtaposed against the world in which you live in. And it's funny because I always say that people think, like contemporary writers like me, that we don't have to do any world building, but I actually do a lot of world building on my stories in the sense of description and where we are and getting people to see, because I know people don't know my hood. So I know that I have to paint it magically the same way you do a fantasy to get people to understand, and really to get people to understand and see the humanity of the people in the hood. So what was your world building process like? Because you really did have to build two worlds simultaneously for Rue to transfer between. And so especially Gazan is like so delicious and rich and creative and nuanced and new. So what were some of the tools that you used, research, history, all of that to build those two worlds out?
You know, to start with Wings of Ebony with East Row, I 100% feel you on the world building piece. Like contemporary novels take world building, because at the end of the day, these are words on a page. Like to make them come alive, you have to build an entire place around these characters, a setting that you can taste and smell and breathe and feel. And so for me, what was really important when it came to East Row was to really show it through Rue's eyes. I wanted the readers, this is also why I chose first person present for that story. I wanted the reader so deep in her shoes that when she hurt, they hurt. That when they walked into Miss Leola's house and could smell pound cake, the reader could smell it too. So I really tried to steep the reader in the things that Rue cares about and make them love what she loves, and then sort of peel back the curtain and show them the injustices that surround her, so that anger that burns in Rue burns in them too, so that they can go on this journey with her. And so bringing the hood alive. It's so funny. People ask me all the time, like, how did you, one of my funniest questions somebody asked me once, and yes, they were, was, how did you come up with all of those ideas about East Row being just such a cool place and so magical? I was like, I was just writing reality. Like, I mean, this is my upbringing, the way that Miss Leola loves on the family, the way that everybody kind of bands together, the way that, like, you know, the store owner knows you by name and he will call your mama if he catch you stealing in the store. Like you, it's a whole community. And so I thought, really weaving those things in with intentional detail and specifics, and showing the relationships in that community and what they meant to Rue from a first person perspective, was how I built that world. And then in terms of like history, you know, a lot of this was Rue's story. And I know this sounds strange to some people, but like, writers feel me on this. Rue told me her story. Like when I started writing the story, I understood that she was angry. I understood that she wanted to protect her community, but like the depths of why, and of course there's like some meta level stuff, right? Because we're digging into ourselves as we explore books that live in us. But she wanted to figure out what her grief was ultimately about. And she wanted to really unearth, like, why was her life the way it was? What factors were at play that separated her parents? What factors are at play in her community that are flooding the community with drugs, violence, and crime? Who's behind that? Like, who should her anger be directed at? And I just let her tell me her story. I began to realize about halfway through the first book that it was becoming a very serious story. About halfway through, I realized, oh, we're going to go there, apparently, because she's about to, this is minorly spoilery, if that's a word, in Wings of Ebony book 1, in the middle, Rue ends up having to go to her father to ask for help. And before he helps her, he wants to show her where she came from and what that means. And when she realized where she came from, the first person she wanted to tell was her best friend, who is not brown skinned like her. Her best friend has a whole different upbringing and worldview. And it was that moment, Kim, when I realized, okay, she's about to call Bree and tell her everything. And then, okay, plot wise, what's next? And it just slapped me in the face. I was like, Bree is about to walk up in here. The layers to Bree walking up into this ancestral place where her people were basically condemned and hiding is like huge. And so I began to realize, okay, so this is not just a book where Rue is fighting racism. This is a book about allyship and privilege, and about colonization, and about what makes it into textbooks, and about altered history. This is a book about a lot of things. And so I wrote it. I tried to write it true to her. But I mean, as a former educator, those pieces that I wanted kids to be thinking about, like, it's always my goal to trick a kid into a book so that they're turning the page and it teaches something by the end, right? Like, oops, I guess you learned something. Like, that's always.
How did I learn this in this exciting adventure?
Exactly. So I definitely, there's nods to Tulsa in this story. There's nods to like conversations about, you know, what we're going to teach and what we're allowed into history books, who's writing the history books. Right. Flashbacks to scenes where you see how sort of the perspective on history on this island is seen a certain way, and Rue doesn't fit that narrative. She doesn't see the world that way because that's not her reality. It was just really deep. Like, I didn't know that's where Rue was taking me, Kim. Yeah. And here we are. Like, this is where
I got this.
Yeah, Rue had my back.
Definitely has your back. I absolutely love it. Yeah, I noticed all those things in the book and all those conversations. And it was interesting to me because I thought about that and I was just like, I bet that these things just presented themselves because the conversations that we have, as Jackie Woodson would say, our kitchen table conversations are always in the back of our mind, even though the world doesn't see them. A lot of times when people talk to me about my video, I'm like, Black people already understood what I was saying. I was just saying it for them. This was not news to them. This was news on behalf of them. You know what I mean? And I feel like Rue did a magical job of, kind of conquering all these conversations in a way that wasn't preachy and that wasn't heavy-handed and that didn't turn it into an issues book, but authentically in her world as it lives in us authentically in our world. So what are some of the things when you finished and you were like, okay, I'm done. I'm after that 35 days and you were finished with Rue and were able to reflect on what it is that she told you that she wanted to do. Was there anything that you had apprehension about? Like,
oh my gosh,
oh man, do I want to go there with this? Or maybe I should adjust it.
Like, okay, first of all, just to clarify, I wrote that in 35 days. This is draft 19.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
draft 1 was 35. This is draft 3. So I learned a little something. Just a little bit. There was a lot because let me paint the context for people in the audience and just for you. Like, I wrote this in fall 2018. And then we lived through summer 2020. In case people don't know this, George Floyd went to high school where my family went to high school. Like, he grew up on the streets where my family grew up. Like, that's so it was difficult because my book does have some difficult moments. Yeah. The first book especially, right? Smack dab, in the middle of the book, there's some very brutally raw moments, honest moments in that book. And my editor and I
his name is Brian.
Ooh, it still gets me every time I read it. But that's the point, right? Like, my editor and I talked about, I was very fortunate to work with a Black editor on this book, which is what I wanted. And we talked about maybe pulling that back, like maybe not being so brutally raw. And this is pre-2020, but I always tell people this, like, when my book came out, my book came out right at the beginning, basically, of Black History Month, the first Black History Month after summer 2020, when all of these conversations about allyship and privilege has sort of taken on this national platform for the first time in my living memory. So I felt this, like, it was like, just so much apprehension about, like, the book is so relevant. And, like, I didn't mean for it to be that relevant. I mean, these issues have been prevalent in our community for so long, but I did not realize Wings of Ebony was going to come out on the heels of such a difficult year for our community. And I just remember feeling like, gosh, is this going to resonate? Is the trauma going to hurt more than the hope resonates? Yeah. Like, that is something I still carry heavily. And I remember to the high school that George Floyd went to, where Jack Yates High School, where my family went, and where some of his nieces still go. I did a fundraiser, like, pre-release for Wings of Ebony. Instead of, like, writing out these blog posts and stuff, here I am calling around donors. Would you donate a copy to Jack Yates High School? Every single kid at this high school needs a copy of this book. And just raising as much money as I could to make sure these kids get this book. Because it's like, if nothing comes of this book, if it goes out of print, nobody remembers it, I want it in the hands of kids who need to see this. And at the time, I wanted it in the hands of kids at the high school in my community. Like, I wanted it in their hands. So yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard, I think, because I wasn't sure. Like, you never, I don't want to be triggering, but I want to be honest. And I maintain, this is one of Nicola Ewan's blurb for this book, gave me such a calm to my spirit. I maintain that this series is a series of hope, because Rue is victorious in this book in a way that I wish I could see in the real world. It was cathartic to write a victory, a magical victory. Magic is like this aesthetic for things that seem bigger than life and impossible. And, like, that magic felt like the perfect aesthetic to communicate this sense of, I understand how impossible the world might seem, but you are powerful in this huge way, regardless of where you come from and what you look like and what people say about you. Like, you are unstoppable. And so that is very much, I think, where the book landed. And I'm very grateful for all of the kids who've connected to it from my community and from outside of my community. I've had readers reach out to me from, gosh, all the way. One of my readers reached out to me from London. She's not Black. She is a person of color, but she's not Black. And she just was going on and on and on in my DMs about how relatable she felt to Rue. And she was just, and I've never even been to London. Like I know, I only know what I saw in Downton Abbey. I don't think that was in London. Like, shame on me. But my point is that, it's amazing what like a story that is like deeply rooted and emotionally girded can do for people. And I'm just grateful that we did it. And I say we because it was a collaborative effort. My editor, my agent, my whole publicity team, my street team who rides so hard for Rue. I'm glad. It was scary, but I'm glad.
I love it. So you've done some heavy lifting on this chat. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about the boys.
I have pictures, Kim. I don't know if I sent you these. Did I send you these? I know you got.
I saw them on Beyonce's Imminent. Yes, the boys.
Stay who you are. It won't lead you wrong.
Yes.
And I was like, I told the artist, I was like, make sure he's tatted all the way up his neck. Like, she's like, all the way. I was like, all the way.
All the way.
Put some gold teeth in there. Like,
J-Mo.
It was so important to me to have these two boys.
Yes.
Black men, hashtag Black men. My other soapbox.
Yes. Black men deserve to grow old. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So how did you decide you were going to turn up this love situation for Rue? I wanted to see a romance situation that I was relatable, that I could relate to. Like, I love all of my YA love interests. I definitely have some stands. I'm a huge fan of the Darkling and Bardugo series, but I wanted to write something where there were two Black boys, one from the hood, because I've never seen that, and this other person that sort of represents like the side of Rue's heritage that she doesn't know a lot about. Like, you have her best friend / ex-boyfriend who represents sort of where she came from. And then you have this other guy who kind of represents like who she is and where she's going. And I wanted to create two impossible choices. And I wanted people fawning over Black men. Like, come on, I listen, I was like, I'm going to write the romance that is relatable to me. And so that's what I did. I was fawning over Rue's daddy. I was like,
Asim, you remember that line where Miss Yola?
Asim is bad.
Like, what did Miss Leola call him? She's like, oh, I know you're talking about looking like a young Idris. Miss Leola, she's a fan of Asim. No, Asim is wonderful. I actually have some surprise character art coming of Asim as well. So I'm excited to show that. But yeah, I just wanted to see a love triangle that was relatable to me. And I wanted to use the romance purposefully. Like in the sequel, I specifically wanted to, first of all, this book heads on sort of the racism plot. The racism plot is front and center because I did not want the racism plot to be able to like be put to the side for other plots. I really wanted this book to read with an urgency that I think dealing with racism necessitates. Like, racism on deck, this is what we're focused on. This is what we're dealing with. And so this book goes hard in that, but I sowed seeds in here that I wanted to grow into Ashes, which is why in Ashes, the focus is much more on the romance, because I wanted to do this sort of like, you can't, for those outside of our community, I fundamentally think that you cannot truly empathize with Black pain or Black trauma unless you understand Black joy and Black love, because you have to understand what's being taken. Like, you have to get it. Yeah. And so this book, I wanted to focus way heavily on the love and use that love in Rue's life purposely to help grow her from the boy who knows her better than she knows herself, and the boy who can see all that she can be, even if she can't see it herself. And I just wanted people swooning, everybody like a good kiss scene. No comment on who the kiss is with, zipping my lips. I will not tell.
It's so interesting that you say that, because that is exactly what I saw, because I was just like, I was like, her future, the bae that sees her future and the bae that knows her best. It's interesting because to me, it was like future bae was almost like the Hotep dudes, right? He was like calling her queen out the day. Like all he was seeing was her regalness. And the other one was like, no, you're a whole authentic person that I rock with. And I see you for who you are. I don't need to pedestal you to make you feel like you got to live up to that. But I also want you to know you dope. And I was just like, I'm just loving this. Rue got all this going on while she's trying to change the world and do all of that. So we're gonna get into the lightning round real quick.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna ask you some quick questions so that people get to know you, and then I have one final question, and we'll go into some Q&A and let the people in the audience talk to you. Okay. Trap rap or conscious rap?
Ooh. Do I have to pick? It depends on my mood.
You gotta pick fast, Jay.
Oh, probably conscious, because I feel like I'm a deeply literary person at heart.
Yes. Okay. James Baldwin or Langston Hughes?
Oh, Langston, I think.
Langston Hughes. All right. Disney World or Disneyland?
Which one is in California?
Land.
Look at me pointing because I'm in Texas. This California, that's Florida. Yeah, that one. The one in California.
Land. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Jordans or kids?
Jordans.
Yeah. Okay. Lipstick, or you only got one to travel with you? Lipstick or eyelashes?
Lashes. And I don't have any on today, but I love me a good lash.
All right, you got one place to go on a Sunday morning to relax. Are you going to brunch or church?
Oh, probably. Can I have brunch at church? I always have food in my purse. I'm gonna go to church with a snack in my purse. I'm sorry. I always have food on me at all times.
You got 45 minutes to raise somebody from the dead, and you can ask them absolutely anything. MLK or Jesus?
Oh my gosh. I have questions for Martin Luther King. I do. I have many questions. I need, yes, who I need to talk to.
All right. You can either swim like a fish to where you can stay underwater an unlimited amount of time, or you can fly like a bird.
I'm gonna do the water. I'm not trying to get up in the air. Don't like it.
Mermaids or werewolves?
Oh, wait, am I dating them or am I being one?
You're being one.
Oh, mermaid.
Mermaid. Okay. All right. And one last final question. You get a bullhorn, a magical bullhorn, and you can make 3 statements into that bullhorn, and everyone in the world will hear you. It will translate into every language. It will come into the psyche of every single person currently living, and you get to make 3 statements. What are those 3 statements?
Oh my gosh, Kim. Okay, no pressure. 3 statements. The first would probably be the power of love cannot be overstated.
Mm.
The second one would probably be you don't have to prove yourself to anybody but yourself. And the third one would be go buy Ashes of Gold.
And on that note, I am going to remind people also, if you have not purchased Ashes of Gold, go ahead and purchase Ashes of Gold. I feel really confident that Politics and Prose is about to, there they are. They're going to drop that link in the chat. So you can go ahead and buy that, and she will sign some book plates. Some of y'all will get some signed copies. Y'all have been listening to JL, and now y'all can ask her some questions all the time. We think that in order to walk amongst giants, that we have to see their statue, but sometimes all we need to do is see their soul. It has been an honor and a pleasure to talk to you, beloved.
Oh, Kim, my heart.
Wow, I feel bad like stopping that, because if I could live in a conversation, it would be this conversation. Thank you guys so much. Are you ready to take some questions? Yeah, there's still time to throw some questions in the chat or in our question down there. But I think we're going to dive right in. And once again, I forgot to mention, if you do purchase it, we will have book plates. Thank you so much, Jay, for sending those. They'll be here shortly. But let's dive into the questions. Okay, our first one is from Paris. And Paris asks, do you have a ritual to get in the mood for writing that you feel makes you the most productive?
I do. It does evolve per project. This particular project I'm working on now, which is a YA series, the world building is very deep. So what I do before I go to bed is I literally fall asleep thinking about the world. I just like imagine little scenes as if it was a movie in my head. A lot of times I will think through the next moment that I need to write in my book and the emotions of that moment specifically. And then when I wake up in the morning, because I'm typically a morning writer, I sit down, I hydrate, I usually do fresh lemon in water. Sometimes I'll take a walk before I write. It depends on how hard the scene is, because if it's really hard, I need to get into it right away before I like put it off. So I'll sit down, and usually that sort of mental warm up that I did the night before will get the words started for me. And then occasionally I usually will take like a 40 to 60 minute walk and talk to my critique partner, because we swap everything that we read the minute we finish it. We just swap it immediately. And so usually we'll talk through what we're planning to write today. I'm a verbal processor. I like to talk. And so me talking through it kind of like hypes me, like warming up, I'm about to get in the ring. I'm about to do this. And so that's how I do it.
It's good to have that support. And Kim, do you want to share, is there a particular quick ritual that you use for when you dive into writing?
Oh yeah, I have ADHD. So I have to immediately take my medication so I can speed up my brain. And one of the things that I do that my doctors are not happy about, but it helps me, is drink a whole lot of coffee to also help speed up my brain. And when I'm writing with Gili, when we're co-authoring stuff together, our ritual is that I come to her house. She's a beautiful brownstone. I come to her house and she makes my coffee. And she's the only person in the world who knows how to make my coffee, including myself. It doesn't taste right even when I make it, unless Gili makes it. So she will make my coffee, and then she will make me breakfast, because she's such a mama bear. She will make me breakfast. She'll make sure I have fruit, that everything is cleared out, that I get super love and hugs from her youngest, Shalevi, who is like my baby. And then once I've got to love on Shalevi for 10 minutes, then I can focus and write.
Oh my gosh. I desire this in my writing life. Please tell Gili how much I love her too.
I will.
Our next question comes from Nick, and Nick asks, will this series, this duology, be an audiobook?
So Wings of Ebony, the first one, is narrated by Bonnie Turpin, who is the GOAT in my
book. Oh my God. I listened to the audiobook. It was so good.
Yeah.
Look, Bonnie did that, man. The second book, Ashes of Gold, does not, per my publisher, does not have an audiobook planned currently. That could change, but right now there's not one planned.
I always love it's almost like a production in itself when you listen to the audiobook. So I'm excited to see that. Our next one is from Jack, and Jack asks, did you have any input in the book covers? It's beautiful.
So the artist is Taj Francis, TAJ FRANCIS. I had an idea, and like it was a back and forth between my editor and I, where we would go and revise and go and revise. One thing I will say though is that the gold pieces, like the foil and the way it shines, like if you have this book, her skin shines depending on how you look at it. I've never seen anything like that. That was a complete surprise. My editor left it as a surprise for me. So I got to like open it and see it for the first time. It was dope. And then this part under the book jacket was also a surprise. My team did that. Chloe is the person on our team who at Simon & Schuster who really brought these covers to life with Taj's design.
Wow. Just a quick follow-up from me. I was gonna ask it later, but it's really resonant in the covers, just to ask you about like your choices, because in this one she's hooded and there's this, of course, kind of reminiscent of this deck of the book. And then in this one, she's in her beautiful, like open glory. And do you have any comments on like how that reflects her kind of trajectory through the duology too?
It does. It really does. Like, I feel like if you see these books together, you're like, wait, what happened? Like, you want to know, how did she go from here? At the end of book 1, she takes off her hoodie, and the hoodie is symbolic. The hoodie is purposeful. Rue wears the entire book for a reason. She doesn't take it off and throw it away. She takes it off and nobody's gonna throw their hoodie away. She takes it off symbolically to say that she is going to just bear her strength on her own shoulders and not hide from either side of her heritage anymore. And in the second book, she is learning what it means to be Gazani. And so that is actually traditional Gazani armor that she's wearing. It has different pieces from all of the different tribes. And she is very apprehensive in the book about putting it on because she doesn't feel worthy of it. But it's fitting that in the end, she is donned in all of it.
I love it. It's such a beautiful, you can't say no to a beautiful cover, and getting to see that on the shelf. And I bet it affects and impacts so many people getting to see these on the shelf.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Kayla, and Kayla asks, how much of the history or backstory of Gazan and its people didn't end up in the duology? Any tidbits you can share with us?
Oh my gosh, so much. Like, man, like it was a good warm up because for my next series, I'm creating a very big world. So I'm writing like tons of history, but like there is so much. I honestly almost didn't get an opportunity, no spoilers, but you find out the backstory of the situation when the island was colonized. And like, because of the way the plot was moving the first time I wrote it, I almost didn't get to tell that story. And it was really important to have those plot threads in there and to really see the villain and like really see him and see the insidious way that he worked his sort of narrative into these people. And so it was hard to pick and choose like what parts would make it. Like I could write an entire book from Asim's, the dad's perspective when he was a teen. And because, the Chancellor raised him. Like he knew his people. And so he's like, the Chancellor found him. This is minorly spoilery. The Chancellor found him trying to flee to the mountain, snapped him up, and foolishly thought, I'm going to turn him to my side because if I need more magic, I'll have him. What'd that sound like? Well, little did he know, Asim was smarter than him, knew his people were in the mountain and had his own plan. So that could be a whole series. Like there is so much in there, Kayla. But we wanted to keep the pacing moving. So we didn't go into the depths that we could have gone.
So for our next question is from Nick, and we're going to dive back into that really awesome love triangle. So it's first for Kim. So Kim, what ship are you? Are you Team Jamal or Team Julius?
Oh, Julius, hands down.
Okay, the friend wins, Miss Kim's heart.
I love, first of all, I won't say who, but like my current betrothed is a known trap rapper. So that clearly tells you my aesthetic. So yeah, I'm Julius all day.
Love it.
Hey, do you have a favorite, or you can't because it's like
me? No, I refuse to answer this question. No, I will say this. My editor and I had different ship teams, which brought balance to the manuscript. But I always love to know who readers believe Rue's true love is. When they finish the book, who is Rue's true love is what I like to ask.
Julius.
Oh, everyone who hasn't read it yet, you got to read it to find out. Our next one's from Kayla, and Kayla asks, it feels important that Rue can travel between Gazan and East Row more readily in Ashes. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it is. I think it is helpful. I think that in the first book, Rue had to sort of establish like who she was and like who she was going to be and who she wasn't going to be. I love how in Wings of Ebony, Rue really owns her magic. She's like, okay, this is who I am. And there is something to be said about a person's ability to go home, whatever that means to a person, especially like for me as like a Black woman, like what is home to me? And I think that definition has a lot of different, that question has a lot of different answers. Like when I wrote this book and I lived literally away from the place where I grew up, I longed for home with an ache that I could physically feel. I longed for my family. I longed for like the familiar faces, the smells of my community, of the burger joint down the street next to the hair shop. Like I missed like the smell of like a hot comb. Like I just missed home. You know what I mean? And so, but then there are other times, like I spent a lot of 2020 in 2021 researching my ancestry. And that was a different type of longing for home. It was a home that I'm not sure I'll ever actually get to see and taste and feel and know in the same way. And there's a perpetual aching and longing for that as well. And so for Rue in the first book, for her ability to go home to be something is not okay. Like that is taking something from a person that is deeply like galvanizing and important. And so in book 2, such a perceptive thing to notice, Kayla, in book 2, Rue goes where she wants and she can go home and draw strength from wherever she needs. And there's a powerful moment in Ashes of Gold where she does exactly that. She understands I need home right now. And she goes and home is there to receive her and home is there to be what she needs. And I think it's just so important, especially for our community. Like home is, I feel like home is taken. There's just so many layers. It's like home is taken from so many Black people, so many Black men. Like there are just layers upon layers of why Rue's transition into her power is also like mirrored in her ability to go home upon like at will.
Oh, right. Thank you so much. It's like, there's so much in your book while also being an action-packed, just fun read that it's just, oh, thank you.
I'm so proud of her. I feel like a proud mom. I feel like a proud auntie right now. I'm like, look at my baby.
I'm doing my imperfect best, little by little, trying to learn something and do something to help these kids and love on us. Love on us. That's what it is.
Our next question is from Stephanie, and Stephanie asked, did you always know that you were going to tell Rue's story in 2 books in a duology?
Yes, from the moment she sold, I knew she'd be 2 books because I had 2 villains established and I wanted to make sure I could deal with each of them in their own books. I wanted to deal with the Chancellor and the fact that he colonized this island that was not his. And I wanted to deal with the general, the antagonist in the first book, and really face racism very head on. So it was always 2.
Our next question is from Christina, and Christina asks, you've previously stated that Wings of Ebony went through 19 drafts. How did you manage to stay motivated and focused through so many revisions?
I just feel like persistence is just my middle name, like nothing I feel like came easy. And I don't mean to say that I didn't have privileges growing up, because I certainly did. What I mean is just that I understood from a very early age that like, it's just going to take me keep going. Like I can stop and not, or I can keep going and see what happens. And so I always prefer to keep going and see what happens. And so I think with writing, it was no different. Like I did it the first time. Gosh, the first draft of Wings, man, one of those days, Kim, I should sing you those scenes. There was a whole like club scene I missed. It was a barbershop scene I missed. Like it was so home to me. But like, I remember thinking like, I have never seen any of this in a book before. Who knows how much I'm going to have to revise it for space to even be made. Because when I started writing Wings, understand that I did not believe deep in my heart that the story was publishable. I just had to tell it. Like I had to get it out of my head because it wouldn't leave me alone. And then slowly, but my worry with those early drafts was, okay, how much of authenticity am I going to have to take out of this to make it palatable for publishing? And I remember draft after draft, I would focus in on the story, the characters, and I would be like, okay, I'm just waiting for this edit to come down where they're going to be like, okay, this is too Black. This is not the hood we understand. Yeah. It never came. And I credit my editor for a lot of that, for being that protection for me. The team was just very supportive, extremely supportive. And I felt like I got to write this book that is just so authentic and raw and unapologetic. And I just haven't seen that. I just haven't seen that in YA so boldly. And so I just feel really fortunate to be able to put the book out. Like this is the fact that this is going to be written on the hearts and minds of young people in perpetuity. Like that is it's an honor I can't even put into words. Like my name doesn't even have to be on here. The fact that this story exists is massively impactful. Like the stuff that is doing and will do Generation Z and beyond. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, thank you. So we have time for a few more, and that's a good segue into the next one too, what you just said. So kind of going into the classroom. Our next one's from Shonda, and Shonda says, "Hi, Jay. Will there be teaching guides that go along with Ashes like there were when you taught Wings?"
Hi, Shonda. I love Shonda. Shonda's an educator. So I am not doing the same sort of curriculum. The curriculum that I built for Wings took me about 14 months to do. And I just, because I'm in the pub schedule of other books, I just don't have the time. I do know that there is a discussion guide coming out. And I would say with enough demand, I could probably reach out to the educator who, after I wrote my curriculum, I ran it by one of my good friends. She's a master teacher in New York, and she basically digitized everything. She made it all like virtual friendly. So you can send a link, and if your kids are remote learning, they can just click through. There's a digital notebook. They don't need notebook paper. They can do everything on the screen. And she also checked that everything was standards aligned. So with enough demand, I'm sure I could probably like elbow my publisher into having her do something for Ashes. But as of now, I know that they are at the very least planning to do, in fact, it's in my email right now. I need to read over it. It's a discussion guide for Ashes.
Love it. Yeah, educators out there, if you haven't seen it, it's so impressive. Thank you so much. There's so many great activities and questions and guided learning. So definitely check that out as a great kind of addition to having this in the classroom. Our next one, just a shout out, just to throw out, you had a couple of shout outs of just like how amazing the book series is. Melanie says, "No question, just wanted to say how very proud of my cousin, Queen Jay. She is so talented as a writer and amazing person. Love cousin Melanie." So you just got a couple shout outs. And I always like to, we have enough time for one more. So I want to end on one I always ask, and somebody also asked it too. But essentially, what are you working on next? You've kind of teased it, but we really loved the characters from this series. What are the characters that we'll look forward to in what you're writing next?
So the next book coming out for me is my middle grade debut. Kim, you're gonna love this one. I'll make sure my publisher sends you one. This one I can talk about because the cover, what are words? They are planning the cover reveal. That's what I'm trying to say. They are planning the cover reveal right now. So the cover I cannot show, but it's called A Taste of Magic. It's about Kiana, who learns she's a witch and enrolls in a magic school in the back of the beauty shop. And
you listen, you know, my day job, I work at Warner Brothers. You can't say this type of thing to a TV producer and then not think I'm gonna be all in your DM tonight trying to see where you are with the film.
Listen, you can read this whatever you want. It's really adorable. So whereas my YA brand tends to be a little darker and grittier, my middle grade story, I like to say, if reading it feels like what eating a warm chocolate chip cookie feels like. It is full of like found family. It is full of magic. It's just beautiful. Like it's this inner city community just brought to life. It's a really cool magic school. The cover is like gasp worthy. The one thing I'll tell you about it is that the wands, they're activated by your unique curl pattern in your hair, whether you have curl or not. And so it's just really sweet. There's food in that book. There's lots of love to the South in that book. It's just home. And so that is the beginning of a series. So that comes out August 30th from Bloomsbury. Stay tuned for the cover. And then my next YA series, I actually am forbidden to talk about. I will say this. It is the best thing I've ever written, but and I'm sure in 10 years I'll say that was the worst thing I wrote, but like it's the best thing I've ever written in terms of I'm just very, very proud of the themes in this book and how powerful it can be in a very nuanced way. I'm exploring this theme of freedom, and it was inspired by the poem. I always forget the exact title. Why a Caged Bird Sings. Is that the official title of the poem?
I know why the caged bird sings.
I know why. Okay, yes. I know why a caged bird sings. That is the sort of the vertebrae of that, at least the first book so far. But it's really fun. It has a really diverse cast. It's a huge world that I hope to write many, many books from. And it has a main character who's very different from Rue, but immediately lovable from page 1. So I'm very excited. That one should be announced soonish. So I'm excited for the world to hear about that one, because it is lush, it is decadent, and it is dark. It's good.
Oh, so much exciting stuff to look forward to from you. Thank you so much, Raw. I bet we're all excited. And Kim, if you want to shout out what you're working on next too, including maybe something that's coming out next.
I am working on JL sending me all these projects. Is my main thing that I'm working on. No, I just recently had a book come out, Geely and I's second book, Why We Fly, which is the story of, it was inspired by the Kennesaw State cheerleaders. It is the story of 2 girls, one Black and one white, who decide to take a knee at a high school football game and the fallout in their small town from that. And it also talks about allyship and what that looks like when fools rush in. And then I am part of, Geely and I have a short story in an anthology coming out next Tuesday called Game On, edited by Laura Silverman, which has lots of epic and amazing other YA writers in there. And then I have my first adult book, my first adult nonfiction, How We Can Win, which is the extension of my video, which also comes out on January 18th. So this comes out January 18th, and the anthology Game On. But Game On, I'm excited about. I want people to read because it's the first time I'm writing something just light, fluffy, and fun. Geely and I have a short story in there about a bunch of kids who decide to have a digital versus analog war at an amusement park.
I need that.
Fun fact too, we're actually doing an event with some of your co-contributors for Game On. So listeners, if you want to check that out and hear about further about that anthology, check out our listings too. So wow, so excited to talk about that one too. But I wish we had more time, but sadly we have to wrap up this amazing conversation, and that's all the time we have for questions. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. And for all your amazing contributions, listeners, and our amazing panelists. Many thanks to Jay and Kim for joining us this evening and sharing your words, your world, and your important insights. And of course, thank you so much, viewers, for joining us today and supporting these astounding authors and voices. So don't forget, you can still click on that link to get your own copy of Jay's beautiful novel, Ashes and Gold. And of course, also copies of Wings of Ebony. And just so you know, book plates will be on their way shortly. Thank you so much, Jay. And of course, check out all of Kim's amazing titles. You can get those in the chat as well. Yeah. Also find out about more upcoming events from our website for updated listings. And you can follow our kids and teen department on social media. We have that handle that we'll drop in the chat as well. You can also watch our past events, which will be posted on the PNP YouTube page, as well as watching this amazing event again. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us. I hope you all keep reading widely, expanding your world, and discovering new ones. Stay safe and have a nice evening.